very deep in the monster continent of Naderia lived a man-looking monster. His name was Randolfo the Tyrant, and he was the king of all monster kind. He somehow had a kid with a human woman, and the result was me, a half monster, half human kid, and the prince of monster kind. Randolfo wasn't a very good dad, nor husband, nor king for that matter. He does have Tyrant in his name, and so Mom and I were forced to hide from him in a little village that was full of very British people.
You're the one what moved into that little hut in the woods, ain't ya? You sneaky rotter.
It couldn't get any worse than this. The British kids bullied me, Mom got ill, and one day I defended a kid from a monster with my half-monster magical sword powers, but then the kid I saved snitched on me and on my monster powers, so then the racist British burnt our house down. I saved your life! For some reason, this made me hold a grudge against not the blindly racist townsfolk, nor the bullies, nor that snitch, but instead against Randolfo for making interracial love and resulting in me being mixed race. Or something like that, that's what I understood. Blinded by my hatred towards him, I left my ill mom behind to die, left unsupervised with a totally reliable slime monster, and went all the way to his castle by myself, only to then be cursed by him so that I couldn't hurt any monster anymore, and I was then sent back to another random little village where I stayed in for the following years. Until one day, monsters ordered by Randolfo found me and tried to eliminate me, and right there and then, my desire for revenge became too much to bear. My goal became to reach his castle once more to defeat and dethrone him, and I wouldn't do it alone anymore, especially since I couldn't hurt monsters myself. This time, I decided to do it with the help of a monster army, but not really, cause this was a Nuzlocke. Very quickly, for those who don't know, a Nuzlocke is a playthrough of a game with the following rules. Firstly, you can only recruit the first monster you encounter per area. In this case, I decided not on the first monster I saw, but on the first one I started combat with. However, if you fail to scout the monster, then there's no second chance and you miss on adding a new party member to your team. I wasn't completely sure on what counted as an area. It could have been each map, or each place separated by a loading screen, but I decided on one monster for each place I could fast travel to. The second rule is that if a monster's health drops to 0, then they're dead. Forever. And last, but certainly not least, you must name every monster you recruit. Let me tell you the story of not only my first and blind attempt at Nuzlocking Dragon Quest Monsters The Dark Prince, but at Nuzlocking anything ever. This would have already been very scuffed being my first Nuzlocke and all, but it was even worse because before this, the only other Dragon Quest games I had ever played were the gimmicky motion controls game Swords, a card one that's in Japanese, and Monopoly. To make things even worse, I also banned healing items during battle, so I hope you're ready to see me suffer. Starting out, I was given my first monster based on my preference for compact and more lovable monsters, a grassy, bulbous starter who I accordingly named Bulbasaur. I peaked with this name, not gonna lie. After leaving Rose Village and officially starting our adventure, we then scouted a slime and called him Goobert, the most uncreative name I could have come up with, but he quickly became one of my favorites anyways thanks to his cuteness. I trained my team for a while, and I learned that when leveling up, monsters can gain talent points used to further their talents. Every monster has one talent centered in learning new attacks and spells, and one talent to improve specific stats. And you get to choose how to distribute your points between these two talents. Very luckily for me, both Bulbasaur and Goobert learned Heal this early on thanks to their talents, so I didn't have to worry as much as I thought about not being able to use healing items in battle. Bulbasaur also learned how to use the light magic called Sis, and Goobert learned how to use Frizz, as in fire magic. Around this time, I also learned about monsters entering a frenzied state, and I don't know the odds, but they get stronger and also have an additional action for the next 3 turns. This game has the option for auto battle, and I decided to always keep it on because I really enjoyed seeing my monsters' decisions, and it also made them feel more alive. But you do get to choose a tactic to change your monster's way of battling. For example, I made both Bulbasaur and Goobert always prioritize healing themselves over doing anything else, which is a lot better than the default tactic of making them go all out that just makes them use all their spells on basic enemies until their magic runs out. But if things got dire, I could always turn auto battle off and just step in to give specific orders when needed. After witnessing a couple of environmental anomalies and contemplating if I should approach a Cyclops that would clearly end the run, I found and recruited a bat and named her Marceline, who was easily her strongest, even though she was 4 levels behind from Bulbasaur and Goobert. Now, I only had one encounter left in this area, and I could have chosen the Coolvine Dragon, or the Sonic-looking Anteater, or the Mole with a shovel, but nothing really convinced me. So I looked around for a whole year, which is like 20 minutes in-game, until I found him. The lovely and tiny Pee-Pee. By now, you must have noticed my weakness for cute little creatures. I could have gone for bigger, stronger, meaner looking monsters, but now my whole team has the same facial expression. We're so doomed. Our next goal was to enter a tournament to gain reputation to catch Randolfo's attention or something like that. So I trained my monsters arduously, day and night, all year long, 20 minutes, with Marceline and Pee-Pee both learning how to use dark magic spells, especially benefiting Marceline thanks to a special trait of hers that made them more effective. Instead of types like in Pokemon, monsters here are divided by 8 different families, like Beast, Nature, Demon, or one that's entirely composed of slime monsters. But that doesn't intervene in their weaknesses nor resistances. Instead, every monster has specific ones for each elemental attack type, like Fire, Water, Wind, Earth, or Explosions. Which I like in concept, but in game, you just don't know which monsters are weak to what, and you just have to get lucky or guess. Like, yeah, of course the chicken is weak to fire and explosions and it resists water, wind, earth, electricity, and light. Something I did find pretty neat, however, is that the same applies for status moves. Some monsters are immune to falling asleep, while others are very weak to being poisoned. And unlike the elemental attacks, it does tell you how effective the status move will be on each enemy. With that explanation out of the way, let me tell you about our first true challenge at the Coliseum. Tournaments are locked to being auto battles, but me and my team were accustomed to it, so it was no trouble at all. After our third match, we rescued some random elf girl and not weirdly at all named her Rose as if she was another one of my monsters. Anyways, at first, it seemed like maybe I had trained my team a little too hard because we steamrolled through our first 5 matches. But then, we reached our final match against a man known for trash talking who went by the name of Gorgeous Gordon! He had 2 monsters supporting one large scary flying python who counted as if it were 2 monsters in one. Not only was it bulkier and stronger than its 2 teammates, this Flython could also attack twice per turn, and it immediately asserted its dominance by poisoning and breathing fire onto all of my team, dealing huge damage as soon as the match began. None of my monsters resisted fire, but I guess at least none of them was weak to it either. My team's strategy was to have Bulbasaur heal when necessary, while Marceline and Pee-Pee used their dark magic and Goobert risked up the Flython. I mean, used Frizz. But this was not optimal. They were dealing too much damage to us every turn. Goobert, Marceline, and Pee-Pee all had close calls. Goobert should have been healing alongside Bulbasaur since the match started, especially since, I guess I should have guessed it, the Flython resisted fire magic. But maybe it wasn't too late. And so, Goobert also switched to healing, putting us in a slightly better spot. We eventually got rid of both of the Flython's annoying companions, and despite our injuries, we were getting closer to victory. Bulbasaur healed Pee-Pee, but both Goobert and Marceline had low health, so as a last selfless act, he healed Marceline over himself, only to then get squished. Goobert! I yelled, but it was too late. He was already gone. Poisoned, but with the strength given to her by her friend's last efforts, Marceline avenged and finished off the Flython, winning us our first tournament. At least, your corpse will make for a good thumbnail, Goobert. I hate you, Gordon. If I had fingers, I would flip you off and then I would strangle you, you monster. There's nothing gorgeous about you and I hope you get squished just like you did to my Goobert someday. Our first challenge was over and I'm glad we survived, but this could have been avoided. And now we had one less healer. Maybe it wasn't that bad. I mean, it was such a tough fight for us. It could have been worse, is what I thought at the moment. But now looking back, this loss was a lot bigger than it seemed. After the tournament, a totally not suspicious cat monster tells us that we could gain even more reputation through the tournament in Naderia, which takes place in their coliseum that's called the Mausoleum. So he gives us a red magic crystal to travel there, but it seems like it only works through some sort of elven magic circle. What will we do? We don't know any elves. Oh, I had already forgotten about Rose. I hope she's completely normal about me saving her back then.
I'll always be by your side, my prince.
Girlie is not coming with me, hell no. After Rose helps us create the portal to the Monster Kingdom through her elven little dance, we travel to the first of the 6 circles of Naderia, the last one being where Randolfo lies, and the first one being the Circle of Conquest, a poison-filled land with our next objective, the Mausoleum. But first, recruitment time! There was a funny looking worm here and I almost fell victim to recruiting another cute slime, which would have been fine, but it was too soon after the death of my last slime. Plus, I wanted to try something different, so I went with a ghost witch that I named Gruntilda. But I regretted it shortly after because my other monsters had useful spells, or strong reliable attacks, or a stat on which they excelled at. But Gruntilda just had cheap weak attacks that relied on status ailments that never triggered, plus bad stats to boot. We then got jumped by the ugliest creature known to man, and after some training, we finally got to the Mausoleum. I was so excited. Our last tournament was totally worth it. Similar to the Pluto and Goofy thing where they're both dogs, the Mausoleum had the funny quirk of having monsters who train other monsters. Don't exactly know how that would work. Alas, this tournament was definitely harder than the last one, but I feel like it was largely because now we only had one healer, plus our new teammate felt almost non-existent at times. As a reward for this tournament, we would get the next magic crystal. We had a couple of close calls in the way, but we eventually got to the finals against some beetle guy. He didn't have a large monster like Gordon's Flython, and we defeated 2 of his 4 monsters without much trouble. Bulbasaur had to heal his teammates a couple times, but we had basically already won. Nothing could go wrong, right? I was shocked. PP just died to the flying plates, not because he was low in health, but because their assassin's stab attack had its auto kill effect trigger. While I was still too stunned to speak, the other enemy monster tried confusing Marceline and very gladly missed. Shortly after, Gruntilda got rid of it with an attack that dealt only 3 damage. Good job, I guess. Now leaving behind only the stupid plates, who then, to our dismay, entered a frenzied state. Apparently they resisted dark magic, so Marceline wasn't very useful and Bulbasaur was usually healing. So while the plates were doing 20 plus damage per attack twice per turn, we were dealing half of that at most. And then another assassin staff came our way. This time towards Marceline.
I'm in danger!
And it missed. However, they still did a lot of damage to both Bulbasaur and Marceline. One of the 2 could die next turn, but Bulbasaur could not let this happen, so he too entered a frenzied state, healing both of them and keeping us safe for the following turns. But then, the flying plates went for another assassin stab. The healing didn't matter, it targeted Marceline, and it had run out of magic. Soon enough, Marceline got rid of them almost all by herself. Good job on not hitting a single poison, Gruntilda. As exhilarating as this match was, this was another bittersweet victory. Goodbye, PP. With the yellow crystal obtained, we were able to travel to the second realm of Naderia, the Circle of Temper, a prehistoric lava realm riddled with barely disguised fetish inflation dragons. Here, the first monster who caught my attention was not the dragons, but a cool looking shadow monster, so I tried recruiting it. Hi, my name's Elim, these are my friends, and we're trying to defeat the tyrant. Would you like to join our party? That was my very first friend, and it had to be another insta-kill of all things.
Sorry, I'm so sorry. Is it fine if I join you?
Sure, but your name will now be Poopy. And just like that, Poopy, with an H in the middle since the game didn't let me name him that otherwise, joined our party in exchange for Bulbasaur's life. I held a grudge against him, but the truth is that he was quite strong. My other monsters were G ranks, and he was an F rank monster. He had a cool Ice Breath attack that attacked every monster on screen, and very strong dark magic thanks to having the same trait as Marceline. Although I expected him to have his insta-kill attack, Whack, with him, but he didn't. Wait a second. Bulbasaur was our only healer left. After avoiding every shadow monster for the next 10 minutes or so, we found our next party member, a Lampling who I named Dumpling. Suddenly, our team stopped being silly and instead became very Halloween-y. I liked Dumpling, but he couldn't learn heal, and even after training him, he was still quite mediocre. But luckily for us, here's where this game's main mechanic got introduced, fusing two monsters to create a new and stronger one. The offspring of a fusion is level 1, but you get to choose which talents it will inherit, and those talents keep all of their talent points, so as they level up again, they get more points to further those two talents. And you even get an extra third talent, so its move pool grows bigger. You might even get a higher ranking monster depending on which monsters you decide to fuse. Now, I didn't really understand it at the time, so I completely screwed myself over by not fusing as much as I could, and I very probably didn't fuse my monsters optimally. There's also NPCs who let you fuse one of their monsters with one of yours, and I did not know this, so I missed all of these and the chance to make my party way stronger for free. The first fusion I decided to make was between my two least competent monsters, Gruntilda and Dumpling, creating our new powerhouse, Zack, the strongest bag of cement in history. In this area, our goal was to defeat the dragon to gain more reputation and so that a chunky rat gave us the next crystal as a reward for doing so. I was quite worried when we got to the boss fight because we only had 3 monsters and none of them were healers. But Zack wasn't just a monster, he was a monster! Not only was he completely immune to the boss's physical attacks, but he was so strong that the battle was over before Marceline or Poopy got too injured. Just imagine getting owned by this thing. Oh, and here we also recruited a Tintin looking guy. His name is Toilet or something like that. With the green crystal in our possession, we traveled to the third of Naderia's world maps, the Circle of Indulgence, a candy land with a tower of pancakes. I might not look it at all, but I love pancakes and anything sweet and dessert themed, so I was really excited thinking of my next monster being one akin to the chocolate golem or the big pudding slime. But it ultimately didn't matter because I got ambushed by a group of orange slimes. I recruited one of them and named her Goobette. She would have totally fallen for Goobert's wrist. I was unlucky because this place did have the chocolate Cornet slimes. Now, this is where I should have fused Goobette with either Marceline or Poopy to make another powerhouse besides Zack. They desperately needed it. But greed took over me, and I left those two behind, instead deciding to fuse Zack with Goobette to create my new favorite, our tanky healer, Goobette Squared. I told you this would be scuffed.
Are those explorers? forest, I spy. I'm Eileen. There's more to this than meets the eye.
Our goal here was to defeat the giraffe at the top of the pancake tower to save some guy and gain reputation, the same as always. Upon entering the pancake tower, I got stuck in the honey, and Toilet saved me by freezing the honey with a magic ice thing he stole, but that pissed me off because I was a poor mixed race kid. I couldn't steal, or else that would enhance the stereotype of my minority group being bad. I gave you a chance and you lost it. In you go. Back in the pancake tower, we tried recruiting a corn monster, but for the first time, we missed the encounter, which hurt a lot more now that fusing monsters turned out to be so important. Once we reached the top floor, the next boss fight began, and it started with the giraffe boss lowering Marceline's and Poopy's defense and dealing huge damage to them. Zack was really powerful thanks to a trait that made his earth magic stronger, but Goobet Squared didn't have that. We sacrificed Zack's strength for the ability to heal, but was it the right choice? The boss took a good amount of damage from Marceline's and Poopy's attacks, and Goobet Squared was doing a good job at healing them, but we couldn't keep up. He could attack us twice per turn because he was a larger monster, and he was doing more damage than we could heal. We weren't graced with the miracle of a frenzied state. And eventually, Marceline was so hurt that Goobet Squared's heal was like putting a band-aid on a broken bone. By next turn, Marceline had been taken from us. One of our strongest and most reliable monsters up until now. I wronged you, Marcy. I don't know why I didn't fuse you! We barely scraped by, but Poopy defeated him right before we lost him too. We saved the monster we were looking for, and the cat from before reveals to us that he's been working with Randolfo and his advisor, Shocker, and asks us to go to the Mollyseum again for another tournament, for more recognition. Last time went great, what could go wrong?
It was at this moment that he knew. He fucked up.
Yeah. I mean, that's what he gets for killing Bulbasaur, but now it was just Goobet Squared and me. I was freaking out. With our newfound reputation, we were now able to speak to a scientist that the cat wanted us to chat with. He mentioned something about a secret of evolution that could make me stop being mixed race, and then asked us for a couple things, one of them being our next objective, something called that Pentaractic Crystal, giving us in return the next crystal we needed. But my morale here was really low. I was not in it anymore. We reached the fourth of the 6 realms of Naderia, the Circle of Caprice, and you might say, hey, cheer up, you can still recruit new monsters, it'll be okay. But I haven't shown you the contract I give to monsters yet. In order for others to join us, they have to be impressed by our strength. And with only one monster left, whose main focus isn't even doing damage, this was almost impossible. And so, we couldn't recruit a new monster in here. I might as well bring out my only other 2 teammates. We eventually found the crystal cave where the Pentaractic Crystal is found, and after a short meltdown and some trouble we ran into,
They're relentless.
we eventually found what we were looking for, embedded on the next boss. A golem. Let's do this, Goobet Squared. We might have a chance. If only we had more teammates who had stabs and magical powers. The golem didn't do that much damage to Goobet Squared, but just like the giraffe, he attacked twice per turn. She wasn't doing much damage either, even less so when she had to start giving priority to healing herself. But before coming into this battle, she learned an improved healing spell that was almost thrice as good as the old spell, so she healed to the max whenever she had to. For a single little slime girl against this big golem boss, she was doing great. It was a hare and tortoise type of situation. We were slowly chipping away at him while he kept doing more consistent but less impactful damage. But then, the worst happened. He entered a frenzied state. I didn't know if she would be able to handle a third attack every turn, especially since he just had lowered her defense. But what I thought didn't matter, he attacked her 3 times and almost defeated her. But in the last hit, he stunned her. She wasn't able to heal, and by next turn, he finished her off. alongside my first ever Nuzlocke. I leave this video scarred, but let me tell you something. This was actually not the end of my journey. I got all the way here again with my new money-hungry party of Mr. Krabs, Wario, and Tom Nook, and they demolished the golem. We got to the last circle of Naderia, and as I imagined, Randolfo's castle was not there. As some of you might have guessed by now, I lied. We actually had to travel to all of the realms 2 more times. We only covered 4 of the 18 areas of Naderia in this first playthrough. I didn't even reach 1/3 or even 1/4 of this game. My money-hungry party that I just spoke about was soon defeated by the actual first tough boss, because the Flython, the Giraffe, and the Golem weren't actually tough bosses at all. In this run, we didn't even face any of the run killers. I made more attempts and kept learning and bettering my strat. And in those playthroughs, I did form armies with strong monsters, like my first large monster Manhandla the Goat, Duma, who did absurd amounts of damage, Gilberto, the best healer ever, Sophia, who taught me that the actual best strat for this game is cheese, by stunning bosses, making them fall asleep, or most broken of them all, lowering their accuracy, as well as many other monsters. Although, I'm glad I didn't have to draw some of these big, complicated monsters that much. This video took way too long to make already. I'm not making more like this. I wish I could, but I'm a perfectionist, and it's just not sustainable, and I would sadly not achieve my dreams and goals, and as far as I got in my other runs, I always kept thinking about Bulbasaur, Goobert, Marceline, Pee-Pee, Poopy, Dumpling, Gruntilda, although not as much, Zack, Goobet, and Goobet Squared, about their journey, the mistakes we made, their brutal ends, but most of all, the fun we had together.